Welcome to the Mind and the Sense of Smell. Amy Poland is our speaker today. She started a career in fashion, fragrance, and beauty. I cut my thing self off here. In the mid 1980s, as a Ford model and Estee Lauder promotional specialist, trained in retail cosmetics until joining Bloomingdale's Boca Raton, where she developed a passion for consumers and outstanding service and became a certified fragrance sales specialist via the Fragrance Foundation's Education Outreach Program. Amy became a national education, teaching salespeople the art of storytelling via multiple brands like Boss, Gucci, and Dolce & Gabbana. 10 years, she was an international brand educator in the South American markets, using Spanish and Portuguese to engage salespeople and developing consistent growth across countries. Now, Amy takes her experience to a new level, and understanding the sense of smell connects people to the world around them. Please welcome Amy.
Thank you, Tim. After becoming a Bloomingdale's girl and having lots of clients um and working towards knowledge of fragrance, to give people more insight into really what they're buying, what's all about. Um, the science behind smell got really intense. 20 years ago, actually, um, 2004, the Nobel Prize winners for medicine were Richard Axel and Linda Buck. And what they set out to do was to understand what's behind the sense of smell. And they identified genes that were responsible for controlling odor receptors in humans. This isn't about, the sense of smell of a dog or a cat. This is about humans. Somehow, the interest really peaked because they wanted to learn more about genes and what their purpose is. And I also found out that there are more genes that control your sense of smell than any other sense. That to me was mind blowing. But it's also too that, you know, every other sense has words. And if you've ever tried to describe the way, let's say, cinnamon smells, it's warm, it's spicy, it's so we're talking in terms of not smell, but taste, touch. So there's really no vocabulary for scent. And they wanted to find out why the sense of smell really is so special. And the study's been continuing. I found myself telling stories about the sense of smell to my salespeople. You know, hey, did you know that lavender, for example, is very calming and soothing? And for some reason, they really understood the emotional words better than trying to describe what it smells like. So somehow I became a storyteller, and I also began finding personality drivers. Some people like to want to, feel like they get noticed. You want to, oh, do you want to feel glamorous? Do you want to feel seen? Do you want to feel confident? Or do you want to just belong? Essentially, what I ended up doing was kind of becoming a bit of a therapist for people who were looking for fragrance as like an accessory, which it is, like a style. So my question was, what do you want to say to the world without saying a word? And this really got me to think about, the psychology of the way that The psychology of smell. And you can answer in the chat yes or no, but has anyone in this group ever had a smell hit you like a ton of bricks or like a bolt of lightning? Somehow a wave of molecules goes across your face and it's perceived in like a 10,000th of a millisecond. Let's say it was your mom's smell. You are immediately transported to that place and that time. And one of my favorite quotes that really got me to really thinking about more about the senses and focusing on what's going on with our senses of smell is smell is a potent wizard that transports us across thousands of miles and all the years we've lived. Helen Keller wrote that. And not, I'm sure not too many people in the modern world, those millennials or whoever they are, uh, don't know who Helen Keller is, but I'm pretty sure that everyone here does. She was blind. She couldn't hear. Really had no voice. And she had her sense of touch and her sense of smell and her sense of taste. So we've all heard that, if you lose one sense, the acuity in another sense becomes heightened. Well, I just thought that Helen Keller is a really good reference because she was like she really wrote a lot about sensual things, the feelings. She was a sensuist. So she talked about how things felt or how they smelled or how they taste in order to like have her connection with the world. So I found that fascinating. But smell is definitely the most direct of our senses. It needs no interpreter unless you yourself are like, ew, that stinks. What is that? Let me get that out of here. Something that maybe not so pleasant. I mean, isn't that great that you can smell food that's gone bad? But to describe a scent is tough because we see things and we analyze them. Well, most sensory details, what you see, what you hear, what really kind of what you taste and feel, go through an editor in the brain, the thalamus. You feel something, it's like, ooh, that tickles. It goes through because you're associating a word with what's happening. But the olfactory cortex is in the limbic system. And what happens with this is that smell bypasses everything and goes directly to the smell receptors and goes immediately to be uh, understood by the brain. So there's no editing, there's not that much delay. But if you really think about it, smell is so important. And even though when we go to sleep, we turn off our vision, we really turn off our hearing. And a lot of the senses, unless you have a cat that sleeps on your feet like here, and then you always know, that there's something, that you're feeling something. But the only sense that does not turn off when you're asleep is the sense of smell. And pretty much, you can guess why. Uh, Fire. You can smell it's there in the background, sort of like your own little smoke alarm. Um, but we also have other things about smell that are essential. For example, in the womb, sense and sensory chemicals are bathing the baby. And when the mom feels when the baby is born, the mother is attracted to that scent, but also the the baby knows the mother's scent immediately. So this isn't some kind of like, you know, I think that Freud and all of his tinkering around with what smell really means, and he turned it into something not nice, but without like something that's a vestigial, appendage, something that, oh, you don't need your sense of smell. It only gets you in trouble. Well, babies sense their mother's scent in the womb. And when the mother cuddles the baby, that bonding is mostly olfactory. I think it's 100% olfactory. So it's important to realize that things may be subtle, but when's the last time you smelled a baby's head? Okay, the baby's head smells so amazing. It's like, well, why would you reject a child that smells like that? So it's very psychological. It's fascinating. Does anybody remember the last time? Oh, Tim, this is for you. That you got a cold? Anybody get COVID at any point? And, they talked about how it diminishes the sense of smell as a respiratory illness. It invades all of the respiration points, including the nose. And I, I think also that the common cold does this too. You can't taste a thing. Um, you don't feel good. You don't feel connected to the world. I'm like you got cotton balls, all around that bubble head. Well, I think it's really interesting to note that 80% of what you taste or you can't taste is smell. It's aroma. So the next time that someone says to you, close your mouth while you're eating, just say, no, I really enjoy aerating my food. The aroma and the taste is enhanced. So that's why you see sommeliers like, aerate and do all of those things that help them connect with the taste and smell at the same time. The gustatory system is really very interlinked with the olfactory system. So, um, working with sense and visual cues with people who can't smell is really who can't consciously smell is a real thing. There's 95% of the people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's and or memory impairment have anosmia, which is a lack of sense of smell. If, for example, someone who got very old and they couldn't taste food or they couldn't, taste or smell if the food was bad, et cetera, it's like removing someone from an active to being an active participant with their life. And taste and smell are really important to help people kind of get back to those older memories because you can't make new memories if the scent and the taste and all of these things don't process into the long-term memory. And memory loss, making new memories is a big trigger for a diagnosis. No, she almost died because she got ptomaine poisoning because she couldn't smell that the food was bad. So a lot of times this happens accidentally. Oh, he didn't smell the fire raging in the kitchen. So it's really important to know that the studies about Alzheimer's are really about re-engaging people through their nose, taking them through something that I've learned is a Proust phenomenon. Proust always wrote about how things smell and the context in which he found himself either in memory or in action. But it's sort of like it taps into that episodic memory. For a lot of people, it doesn't go away when they lose their short-term memory, and engaging this longer-term memory is kind of like a trigger to episodes in life that can help them reconnect. Um, Scent is like a tripwire. And if you consciously share scent with visual cues and auditory cues, it does really help people focus on feelings. Remember what I said about, being a therapist? To me, it's the same kind of thing. There is an amazing woman who realized in her career as a perfumer, as a fine fragrance perfumer, that there was a really underserved group. People who are nonverbal, people who may be on the spectrum, don't interact well socially, have a lot of, triggers, and you touch them and they freak out. Um, it's really stimulating the sense of smell with something is a way to capture focus. And Ruth Sutcliffe, who is behind the Scent Guru group, came out with a kit called Mind Scent. This will be in the notes. I took a picture of it. But she had a brother who was nonverbal. She had a mother who had dementia, got lost all the time. And what Ruth decided to do was create a kit of scents with like corresponding cue cards. And every one of these scents is like in a little roller ball, and there are scents in them like donuts. I could talk to my mom all day long about donuts. Um, you know, Popcorn, bread, marshmallows, roses, whatever, but grounded in real life. And the reason why I chose cinnamon earlier is because it's so easy to get the cue between the scent because it has a nice, strong, very pungent scent. And maybe, even on the back, cinnamon is a spice that comes from the bark of a tree. In China and Indonesia. So we can really help the person who is smelling how to cue them in that this is a building block for apple pie. Don't you love apple pie? And you can get a reaction, a smile, or start a conversation. So I really fell in love with Ruth and her work. There will be notes. I mean, if you want to investigate what they're doing, but June is like mental and brain health month. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. There's a book that I read and I got really inspired by Ruth, and it's called Alzheimer's Aromatherapy and the Sense of Smell. This is in the notes too. And it's fascinating because we I don't know whether anybody thought this or not, but aromatherapy, like, oh my God, like real hippy dippy, oh, weirdos and crystals and stuff. But it turns out that dealing with people with dementia and Alzheimer's really benefit from aroma therapy. essential oil. And Dr. Willem in France has been working with patients for about 10 years, doing a lot of research. And one of the things that they really came up with is that they found a way to create a, a daily routine using one of these mister things, this aromatherapy thing with um, like different oils. And what happens is it provides an olfactory cue to the patients what time of day it is. So they program different essential oils for breakfast, lunch, whatever time, but it's really interesting. So the doctor has said that some of the best therapy is cognitive and olfactive therapy together to realize that the nose is still working. There are just some plaques and there's a lot of damage going on in other areas of the brain, and losing the sense of smell first is definitely a sign, but it never goes away. It can be retrained. So I find this fascinating, and I really wanted to share with the group. Humans can detect 1 trillion odors with 400 types of scent receptors that renew every 30 to 60 days. So it's really important to keep your your active smelling active, to keep that connection. If you feel like, you lose time or you lose interest, they did a wonderful study about aromas and depression. So there's a lot of things out there that they're really looking to get people more interested in the sense of smell, and not necessarily, designer perfumes. I mean, I'm over that in my career, but I love to share really good info. I got this little kit. These are inhalers, and it comes with it's by Moxie, and it comes with these inhalers in, like, I don't know how many, 5 or 7, and each one has a little cue like, oh no, I have to go to my mother-in-law's and I don't like her cooking, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you pick one? You're like, oh, okay. No matter what mood you're in, it can help be uplifting and relaxing. So you choose, for example, bergamot, which is a citrus fruit that you'll also find in Earl Grey tea. So it's not there to, make you feel designery. It's there to make you have a really great exchange with your perception. And who knows? I mean, maybe next time you go out for a walk, you'll go on a little scavenger hunt to find the rose bushes in the neighborhood. Um, we've got so much opportunity in the future to investigate how we can help people with memory loss or cognitive disorders using something that doesn't use the rational brain. And I'm really excited about it because this kit, I'm going to start volunteering to, talk to people. God knows I don't know them. I don't know their history, but it will be really good to talk about what does this smell remind you of. And if they can't say, I'm really looking forward to it. One of the members of Mensa down here, which is how I met Judy, we did a sense of smell and the memory in a live group. And I just found it really fascinating. And I actually let the group sort of take control of what was going on. So I think it would be probably a really good time to look at your questions. Um, I think that also the most important thing that I learned from doing this kind of discovery is that I read a new book and it's called, oh, Your Brain on Art. And it talks about art and cognition and neuroplasticity. So I really believe that the sense of smell being um, just a bolt of lightning bypasses so many things and just becomes emotion and memory. How did you feel? What did you do? So think about that. Let's look at the chat, huh?
Okay, one question is I seem to react very strongly to smells. I like a few scents, but actually really, really hate the vast majority of smells. Is this normal? Just my DNA. I hesitate to go places for fear that other people will have perfumes or essential oils because I hate it that much. It makes me sick to smell these oils.
I'm so sorry. Um, Hypernosmia. It means you're very sensitive to smells. Um, it's not an easy world to be in, I'm sure. But if you think about it this way, everything is scented. And I think that this hypernosmia comes from, I mean, I have garbage bags that are scented, cat litter, what else? I mean, every product we use is scented to mask the chemicals or, let's just get some bleach. So it is difficult. Do you think that um wearing a COVID style mask is going to help? Does it help? There are also some kind of ionizers that I know people who wear them because they're hypersensitive. They ionize the air around, your headspace.
Also, personally speaking, when I run across it, there's a particular smell when there's an electrical short, and that makes me sort of almost jump back.
Well, did you feel the shock and then smell it and thought your hair is on fire or something?
No, I didn't get shocked, but it was just the smell.
Yeah, it remember fight or flight.
Right.
Smell gives us that kind of a reaction. It's jolt, it's jarring. Oh, Alfred, the basement in his parents' house has the scent of his deceased father. It's like he was there with me. Wow. Very emotional. Um, does
Yes,
it does it make Alfred, does it make you sad?
but no, it didn't make me sad. It just, I don't know what to say about it.
Well, if you felt connected then. You felt connected and obviously, you weren't sad, but you also didn't run out of the room screaming. So that's pretty cool.
Another post on chat is what about creative chemistry such as dopamine and focused goal oriented chemistry such as endorphins? To
Hmm.
operate in groups, pre verbal man had a way to communicate imaginative versus action oriented mindsets. The genetic roadmap makes sense. What about the glandular side?
The sense of smell can be skewed by medications, definitely. But also let's say you smell something. I'll give you I'll give you a wonderful example. I was packing up my dishes that grandma gave me when I got married a million years ago. And for that reason, one day I just wore this particular concentration of my favorite fragrance. And as I was packing the dishes, it hit me like a ton of bricks. This was my grandmother's smell that I had chosen for myself.
Hmm.
So conscious, unconscious, those kinds of memories give you a reason to think about the psychology of it. I mean, a connection visually or touch doesn't quite do the same thing. Um, it does allow endorphins to be released, especially if it's a very pleasurable kind of scent. There is a Dr. Rachel Hers who is a smell psychologist. And she does work with people to find out what reactions are. And I like what you asked about I like what you asked about the endorphins and ways to improve cognition with a scientific approach. There are molecules that do work and fit into certain pieces of the olfactory system that have noted reactions, whether it's wide awake, whether it's going to sleep, and that I it's not quite I'm not a mistress in the field quite yet, but I'm hoping to be able to study more and learn more about that. Thank you.
One person has said, can we focus more on specifics of the presenter's experience as a perfume slash scent professional?
Um, you know what? I started with Estee Lauder in the mid 80s and I have a degree in Spanish. So, uh, but I learned so much from the people that went before me. I always had wonderful trainers who took the time to explain, to put us in a position, to make us feel together. So I think being a trainer with my experience behind the counter, um, I dealt with a lot of customers and I dealt with a lot of clients, and there's a very big difference be between customers and clients. Um, what else do you want to know? I've been to France. I've been to Grasse. Everywhere I go, I stick my nose in something. Always have, always will. And no, I never got stung by a bee. So, I think that going to a fragrance counter or, going to buy something it's not quite like it used to be. The entire industry has spent the last, I'd say, 25 years trying to eliminate that personal subjectivity. They're always coming out with a new fragrance finder. Oh, if you like this, then try this. And with tastes and styles and this and that, it was like they're doing everything they can to get rid of any subjectivity. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I mean, there's a lot of people who really rely on those, surveys and digital stuff. This is for you. But the unfortunate thing is that a lot of people buy fragrances over the internet, or they don't actually try them before they buy them. I kind of wish that we were all in the same room because I've got things that smell and smell real good.
Um, one person's asking, is sexual attraction affected by the sense of smell? And could there be a love potion, or is the attraction to smells too individual?
Um, yes, and yes, and yes. I've read a book. It's called The Science of Kissing, and it's about the scent glands around the mouth and the nose and the forehead, when you get close to someone. It is Scent is a cue also that if you don't like the way that person smells, if you don't feel like, you couldn't hug them and never let them go, that it's time to go. They were talking about gene pool, right? That question about, the gene pool and prehistoric communication and all that, that is exactly that. It is a perception of someone's odor molecules, whether it's the bacteria that likes them on the skin or, whatever they emit that is attraction. It's also a way to help the gene pool stay viable. Um, there are very subtle signals that say this person that you don't like the way they smell, you like their personality, but you get in a foot of them, you're like, oh no. That's a way to project the gene pool. It's a way to say, oh, you're a little too close to my lineage. So, no, the way to keep the gene pool healthy. Um, Food also has a very big effect on the way a person smells, too. If they like onions and garlic and hot sauce, all that stinky stuff. Um, so you have to decide whether you like them with the garlic smell.
I think turmeric is one of the issues, isn't it, with Asian people, particularly South Asian, because they use a lot of it and you can detect it.
Yes, it comes out through the skin.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
It's
One
a bunch
question
of
is,
chemicals.
sometimes I'm aware that particular. Oh, excuse me, I missed one. What exactly did you? It's moved. Hang on a second. What exactly did you tell people when advising on scents to choose?
I always wanted to make sure to ask open-ended questions. A lot of people think that, oh, do you like this? It's not an open-ended question. It's something you can't say yes or no to. When are you going to wear this fragrance? What have you used in the past that you liked but need an update? Um, when are you going to wear this fragrance? What are you going to be doing? So the who, what, when, where, why questions are super important because it allows a person to sort of imagine themselves where they're going, what they're doing, who they're going to be with. Oh, you have a date? Oh, it's prom night. Oh, I found out a lot of information about people and their lifestyles and their personalities. And I don't know, I had a lot of chutzpah. I was just like, I recommended, oh, you need this. So I also try not to put a whole spray on somebody. I try and maybe either give them a sample or put just a tiny drop on the back of the hand and let it dry and notice little by little how that scent is going to change, what's coming out with the heat of the body.
This is something that came up on NPR the other day. Apparently, teenagers are using quite high-end fragrances.
Yes, they are. Um, the average of those high-end fragrances is probably about 400 to 600 a bottle. Yeah, this is not this is one of those kinds of, oh, we're very, very, they are niche, they are special, but they started out as being very niche, like a small laboratory, a small brand. They make different things, and then they do so well because it's so customizable and it's so that they get bought by those really big companies, and then they start, charging accordingly. The ingredients are expensive. The artists that go in it perfumers are rare, especially brilliant ones. But teenagers using their mother's fragrance probably got them turned on to it.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah.
so it's mainly women then. I got the impression that it may be men or
Oh
young
no,
boys.
men also
Mm.
are doing a lot more, especially younger ones, because they're putting it out there. They you may not is that's the thing, is that it's an invisible accessory. You'll look this way, but you smell that way. Do you want to seduce? Do you want to party? Where are you going? What are you doing? Where do you put your fragrance?
What is your favorite cologne on a man then, would you say?
Um, it is a vetiver, and it is by Guerlain. It was created by Jean-Paul Guerlain in 1959.
Good
The other one that's my favorite for women is Shalimar, and it was created in 1925.
Lord.
And I have a great one. And this is something that, if you want to experiment a little bit, this is for both. It's a generic, it's for both genders. 4711. I'm
It's eau de
sure
cologne, isn't it?
someone recognizes this eau de cologne,
Right.
Germany, from 1750s. This is still, I think, my favorite fragrance because it's uplifting and very citrusy, lots of orange blossoms, and it uplifts the mood, it clears your head, and then it kind of fades away.
We're lining up with chats. I'm sorry. How useful are the sex pheromones that are being sold?
Um, they're synthetic, therefore they are really not going to do much. If they're constructed in a laboratory, inspired by, other things like, um, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not interested in that anyway. Sorry.
Right.
Like,
Another
you want to
question
get paid, you can pay for it.
is another question is Youth Dew really the sexiest fragrance ever?
For you, maybe.
I don't even know what it is.
Youth Dew was by Estee Lauder, her first fragrance, and she sold it as a bath oil, starting in 1954, I think. Um, Women were coming into their own in the 50s, the 60s. Women were there as they were buying their own fragrances now. They didn't have to wait for a birthday or somebody to buy them a fragrance, and Estee Lauder made that possible. This bottle of bath oil can be used in the bath. It can be used a little here and a little there. It's a very empowering fragrance. It's got a lot of incensey, warm spice to it.
I was in the gym once in Studio City years ago, and some guy was putting some spraying himself with some cologne, and one of his mates said, "What the is that? Raid?"
Yep. Well, Axe is what the millennials started using, and now they've graduated to using those $400 bottles of fragrance. My son's friend, I turned him on to fragrances when he was in high school on the football team, and now he's like Mr. Connoisseur. He knows what he's doing. That's really what I love doing. And if you wanted to, ask me like the best part of my professional life was empowering people to own it and not be shy and don't be afraid. What's going to happen? Here, it's the bathroom and wash it off with soap and water.
Mm-hmm. I guess one of the things, it's almost like a standard joke in some films where somebody will say, "Oh, what's that pong?" Because somebody's overdone it, maybe, you know.
Yeah. Does anyone remember Giorgio of Beverly Hills? They used to put signs on restaurants that says no dogs, no Giorgio.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, you know? Um, great. It's so great. Anybody else? Anything else?
Is anybody I've missed? I think we've covered most of it. Elizabeth, can we unmute Elizabeth?
Oh yeah.
You're talking to me?
Yes, please.
Okay. I had read that perfumers are having problems because a lot of the ingredients that they used to use, like animal based and uh, some other sources that they used to use that really had a very compelling sense of smell in their formulations, that they're having to phase those out now. And so a lot of perfumes don't smell the way they used to. And I wondered if you have anything to say about that. Is the industry running into trouble with that? That's
It's
what I.
very it's very perceptive because what you're saying is true. Um, Perfumers are running into roadblocks when it comes to supply. Um, they don't necessarily have an unlimited resources. And um, I'll give you a great example. How about Chanel number 5? It's been on the market since 1921. And the roses for Chanel number 5 come from a certain area in France. One year, the yield was very low. There was a lot of rain. There was, environmental issues. There's drought. There's all of these things. But one of the things that the perfumers do is they keep blending from harvest to harvest. I don't know if vintners do that. I don't know if winemakers do that. They may, but they keep blending, and it will vary, but just the slightest bit and they keep stockpiles amazing. But you're right. Perfumes have gone through a big transition. Musk. I know you were reading about musk or ambergris, those animal products that we don't use anymore because people were killing whales for the ambergris, but and all of those other things. So there's also other chemicals like coumarin that comes from bitter almonds that is dangerous. So they're not using that anymore. They have to come up, and a lot of the things in those big pricey bottles that we talked about, they are focusing a lot more on natural, small batch. It could be limited edition because there's no more. I guarantee you that which is the scent that you were most curious about as far as its age and whether they make it?
Uh, there were a few, and I went on a couple of perfume blogs, and there was a lot of discussion about that. And I've noticed that, people will say, "Oh, this fragrance is amazing." It's like 92 out of 100, which is pretty darn good. And I would try it on, and I know a lot of it's personal chemistry, and I would just think, "Oh my God, this is awful," because it's me.
Yeah.
But I also know that, like, and try not to laugh. But when opium was first introduced, I really liked it. I wore it very sparingly because some people said it gave them headaches and all, but it changed. And
Did change. You're
yeah,
absolutely right.
yeah.
They can't source the same materials. Some of the fragrance ingredients have been banned in fragrance compositions now because they're chemical, they're dangerous. But opium is not, it may not be the same. I mean, I still have my opium, and that's the only one. I won't buy another one because I know how different they are. But um, anybody have a fragrance that they have had for 20 years?
Yes.
What happened to it?
Oh, it's still around. I have Paco Rabanne and also
That
Aramis.
never goes bad. There are fragrances, if you have a fragrance that is maybe been in your place for 20 years, the top notes, the stuff that is the lightest molecules, the ones that burst open at first, those tend to get a little overdone. They turn funny, but go ahead, put on your fragrance because as soon as those kind of go away, then the heart of the fragrance comes out and it's true. It's true to its molecules because they don't degrade as quickly.
I was wondering if anybody would like to say anything personally, if they'd like to put their hands up rather than in the chat. Oh, I can't read it. Sorry.
I'm going to ask.
Last name Fenton. Can we unmute that person, please?
Everybody can unmute themselves right now.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
my name is Janice Fenton, and I live in Hawaii. The name of my street is Moani, which means wafted fragrance. And I live in a small valley, high on the side of the valley, adjacent to watershed property, conservation property. And it is just the most delightfully named street because at most of the time, it's a wonderful sense of well-being in the scent. It's green. It's after a rain, it smells a certain way. If the sun is shining on the earth, it smells slightly different. And then during certain seasons of the year, when things upwind from us are blooming, there's a floral fragrance to it. And it's just been a delightful experience. We've lived here on this particular street for about 29 years, and I couldn't have chosen a better place. It reminds me a lot of rolling in a newly cut grass as a child.
What a active living memory you're making. Oh, that's fabulous. What was that word again? Moani?
Moani, Moani.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up. Pikake flowers. You are just wow, you're in the middle of it.
Thank you.
I want to, if you have the time, go back to Alzheimer's a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're working with someone who is in an advanced stage of Alzheimer's, is it helpful to kind of go back and maybe present them with some odors that they might have smelled when they were younger?
That is a brilliant idea. You can associate, maybe you still have their perfume or, roses or
No,
rose gardens.
I'm visible. I can see me.
I see you.
Yeah.
Yes. Bringing things that are familiar and working with the scent and a visual cue together and ask them, tell me, how do you feel? That's a great idea. Do you have someone in your circle who has Alzheimer's?
My husband's mother is really in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's, and asking her, she really can't verbalize anymore. But occasionally she'll come up with something very surprising, like she started to sing Tannenbaum the other day, with Christmas tree in German. So I'm wondering if maybe she smelled something, because it would seem to be spontaneous, and maybe if we bought maybe the odor of a Christmas tree around or something like that, it would help.
The scent guru has a scent that smells like pine, or this and that. If you can get a bough of pine, or something that maybe to touch, to see, to smell. Oranges are wonderful for that. Yes, love.
Is there a brain path for smell that can be stimulated if you have lost your sense of smell for either old age or medication?
Yes. Retraining the nose is possible. It's very possible. It just has to be very active. So, the sense of smell, it keeps going, but we're not really cognizant of it. So you have to actively smell things. Smell that peppermint and make a new memory with it. Or smell that rose smell that rose and make new memories.
But if it doesn't smell to you, for example, I have a dog, and people tell me he has bad breath. And I don't know that. I don't smell anything bad, but I don't smell anything good either.
You know what? You're just used to it. You're used to the dog smelling like his self. It happens. It does happen. We get sort of used to those things in order to focus the rest of our olfactory system on something else, like food in the kitchen. A great example of this is there's like olfactive fatigue. If you smell more than three fragrances, you're never going to be able to make up your mind, right? So it's a bit of it's that you're overloaded with your dog's scent, but unconsciously you turn it off.
Okay.
Um, you might trust your friend. Do they have a good sense of smell? Ask them, because if they say it, you may not realize it.
Yeah. Okay.
What's your dog's name?
Rocco.
Oh, all right. I have a cat named Patchouli. I love Patchouli.
Oh.
That old hippy stuff. Really good.
Oh. Well, he's lying right here on the floor. He's very happy with Zoom meetings. But
Oh, we got another question. We got a question here about um my experience with how different a fragrance can manifest from one person to another, yet it's the same product placed on each of them. That is um Monica, thank you. Like for example, Jean-Paul Gaultier, the one for men that comes in the mail in the mail bottle. Um, they do not smell the same on everybody. And going back again to the top notes of a fragrance, the top notes are like citruses or things that have very small molecules and they break apart very easily. When you get to the middle notes, it's going to be more about flowers. It takes a little longer for that second phase to come out. and there's probably something that is that's just not responding well to the same fragrance. I mean, there are fragrances who smell the same on people because they're designed as a linear fragrance. It's designed to smell the same way from when you put it on until it wears off. We can thank Estee Lauder for that. But base notes are the ones that take the longest to come out. And sometimes it doesn't smell good on you and it never will. So that's why I do that little dot, that tiny little dot of fragrance on the back of the hand to see, because I was the first person to say, that's not right for you. Let's try again. I would hate to sell somebody fragrance.
Somebody's asked if someone has bad body odor, should they use perfume to cover it or just to resolve the bad body odor?
Okay, body odor is really caused by bacteria farting. For lack of it, for lack, it's their gas. So if you really want to get rid of you have to use antibacterial stuff. And if they don't want to wear an antibacterial or something, like that, then they'll just, mix a bad smell with a good smell, and it's still a bad smell.
I notice now I can spot smokers, whereas before I think I probably didn't. I kidded around with my ex-wife because she was a smoker. And after she'd been petting the cat would come over to me and I'd say to the cat, have you been smoking again?
Yeah. Everybody says that, well, I'm sure that you've all noticed, you go places and you don't see people smoking. You don't smell it either. So it's starting to like phase out now. One thing is, maybe nobody in this group is a marijuana aficionado, but damn, you know what it smells like, okay? If someone's smoking pot anywhere around, you're like, what's that? Who's that? So even though we may have never, been a fan or, experiment or whatever, we still know what it smells like, and it smells just like that. And there's a perfumer who actually made a fragrance called cannabis. And there's one that's called burnt rubber. And there's another fragrance, a lot of them, a lot. And anybody ever experienced odorama? Remember John Waters and that movie Polyester?
Oh, right.
So he came up with odorama, which is a scratch and sniff card for the movie. It didn't take off, but people are swearing every day, oh, we're going to have scent over our phones. I'm like, okay. Keep believing that. Let's see what happens. Anybody
missed anybody?
Night flowering jasmine.
Yeah.
It's in your neighborhood, isn't it?
It's very close. I'm trying to grow some right now.
Yeah, I like that.
How consistent are the perfume and cologne aromas from year to year?
Year to year, okay, fragrances are designed and made 5 years ago. So they make enough for a 5-year supply. They build a lot. So year to year, they're not going to change, but decade to decade, they will. Takes a little longer, Dan. Decade to decade. Just like 20 years ago, people weren't really interested in the sense of smell. And then all of a sudden, the Nobel Prize goes to the smell researchers. So I think every decade.
I had an experience when I was a young teen where during a drug education class in school, the uh, while while all of us were busy working on a quiz, the teacher secretly lit a Peloton on his desk, which and I was close to the front and was the first to smell it, and I instantly knew that this was marijuana, although I have no recollection of ever having smelled it before. And
Oh, your intuition,
yeah,
your intuition and your nose were together.
yeah, I was since I was the first to react to it and looked up sharply. He commented on that, and I'm sure he thought that I recognized it because I had used it myself or something. But
That's funny. That's very funny. Did you graduate? Obviously.
yes, oops.
Oops. I went to Tulane University for 2 years between my sophomore and junior year. And then, thank goodness, I went to live in Barcelona for my last year for language immersion and study. I was so lucky because I don't think I would have graduated. I mean, New Orleans was woo. So, yeah.
I believe I heard you say that Chanel number 5 was made from roses. Could you discuss how that is done?
Essential oils, the molecules that we smell, have to be captured somehow. And for example, in Chanel number 5, there are roses, there are violets, there's a lot of different smells. And roses are distilled. Roses are hardy enough. They're all picked at like just before the dawn is breaking, that when their scent is at their most concentrated. And they go into a big vat of, steam, water, and the steam lifts out those essential oils and makes them float on the water vapor. And then they separate the water vapor from the oil. So this is one way, is distillation. Um, there's also another way to get, the only way to get jasmine, which is also in Chanel number 5, is done by a technique called enfleurage, or they soak the jasmine in oil because the oils will absorb the scent molecules. There's also a very unique synthetic note in Chanel number 5 that makes it sparkle. And that is it's an aldehyde, and it's a carbon molecule that has like 11 spots on it. It's 11, carbon 11. Anyway, this acts on the rose or the jasmine or whatever is going on in this particular fragrance to give it a lift and a sparkle. And this aldehyde allows those molecules to fly. It absorbs a little of it and then it goes. It absorbs a little and it keeps releasing more fragrance. Chanel number 5 has a huge story, and there's lots of books on it. Number 5 was Mademoiselle Chanel's favorite number, and her perfumer, Louis Polge, oh no, Edmond Rudnitsky, He was Russian and he came up with this, he kind of overdosed it with this little molecule and she kept going back to number five, number five. So she thought it was lucky. It was totally unique and different. And it's still on the market, which is pretty cool.
Yes, I met an acquaintance here who worked for a company that sells scents for commercial use to control customer behavior.
Oh,
For example, popcorn scents in stadiums. And and then here in Hawaii, I know of at least one restaurant, small boutique hotel that has used it as a branding tool with the scent of plumeria. Is this very widespread elsewhere? And can you comment on that industry?
yes. Ambient fragrance has really been in sort of the background of a lot of things in our lives. Um, Great example. I went to a conference in Las Vegas, and you know how big the hotels can be, and get this, and I'm like, I was looking for the pool. And then I said out loud to myself, "Where's the pool?" I smelled it, and I looked, and there was the pool. There was the pool. Olfactory cues are so important in places like that. I don't know how they do it or what. It's all done with a mister and all that, but those olfactive cues are very important. Um, the thing about popcorn in stadiums is wonderful. If you do an event in the perfume department with popcorn, serving popcorn, you will have a terrible event and you won't sell shit. Sorry. That's just from experience. And yes, the Westin Hotel. Anybody ever smelled the Westin Hotel? It smells like green tea and vanilla, I don't know what. Every one of those hotels, not just the boutique ones, have their own, corporate scents. And there is a wonderful new company called Aroma 360, and it offers this kind of bespoke or custom or at least customized way to scent an environment like the hotels do. Like, I don't know what it to smell like money in the bank. Does it smell like money in the bank? I think so.
Just a personal note here. My daughter used to work at Baskin Robbins, and whenever there was a slow day, they would take their fans where they would like cooking the waffle cones and things and make it blow out into the parking lot, and it would attract people.
That's wonderful. You never know. I mean, she'll probably how I don't know how old she is now. If she's still, I know she's not working at Baskin Robbins, but if she goes down the street and she gets that smell, she must feel wonderful. What a memory.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
You know,
Hi.
hi. You know if there's a Chinese restaurant nearby.
Yes, you do. What's your favorite part of that Chinese smell? What is it?
Hmm. Hmm. I've never thought about it. Never thought about it. The
Well,
sesame oil, probably, but
your gustatory system, your gustatory is working on overload. So it's like the whole thing. Um, it's funny because dogs, unlike humans smell the total experience and understand it. But like dogs, they don't smell pizza. They smell everything that makes up the pizza. So I think I would personally get very distracted. It's like, ew, there's ginger in that. I don't like that. I mean, so I like that you just like the whole thing. It's like the promise. Delicious.
why do some people put on so much cologne or perfume that it's overwhelming to others? And why can't they understand or realize that they're using too much?
Remember the thing about the dog and his bad breath? It's the same kind of thing. Someone who's been wearing that scent for a long time, they become somewhat immune to it. Also, they probably lost some of their sense of smell. It depends on, and aging has a lot to do with that, Dan, I think. As the nose dulls, people put on more. My mom did it. My mom wore tons of perfume and she goes, "Oh, I love it." Well, she couldn't smell. So I made sure to give her things that went away pretty quickly.
I have a question. Uh, Dogs are supposedly have a much more acute sense of smell than we do.
Yeah.
Is that really because they have their nose a couple of inches from the ground versus we who have our noses several feet from the ground?
That's a pretty interesting perspective. Nose to the ground, you're going to smell more of the miasma, that down below stuff. And you're right, as humans, as we got upright, our everything was different. And now we're smelling things that come on the breeze rather than, what's coming up from the earth. No doubt dogs have a much keener sense of smell than humans. But like I said, they kind of pick everything apart. Dogs can smell like 20 times better than we can, but they don't quite process it as a whole the way that humans do. They don't identify it quite as much with pizza. They smell pepperoni, they smell cheese, they all those, and they can't, you know, they don't have that logic. But
Well,
they're very good at being trained at learning to detect smells. The COVID really brought that out in a lot of dogs. And and also, the drug sniffing and all of that. I mean, dogs are perfectly suited for that.
yeah, but you talk about dogs having a much keener sense of smell, but is it really true? They have certainly more sense receptors than we do.
Mhm.
Uh, do they really sense more than we do?
I think they sense more of the minutia, the details that go into making up what we perceive as like, one thing. I do think that, dogs and animals, they have much more fine tuning.
But how do you know that?
Well, I read it in a book, so might be wrong, but I do a lot of reading.
I'm going to put my 2 cents in here. I think just like anything else, dogs are individual. And I had one dog, and you could just tell it was totally controlled by its sense of smell. That was so important to it. Smell something would go right to it. But other dogs, okay, it smells, but you don't see them reacting that much.
But are they really sensing something more subtle than you are?
I think so. I that's a great way to describe that, Alfred. They are sensing things more that are more subtle. Yes, good way. So much of what dogs do is smell, because that's like their primary sense. Some dogs can't see, some dogs can't hear, but the smelling part. And it's so funny in my neighborhood, all the dogs, they have their little walk and they stop here and they sniff, and it's like it it's like wireless communication. It's like, oh, hey, Ralph was here. Let's see if he was over here too. So they know who's been around and they're in tune with that subtlety. All I know is it stinks sometimes.
I got the impression that dogs are basically visual, just like we are, and their secondary sense is auditory, just like ours is, but they have a much more acute sense uh, uh, sense of smell than we do. And I wonder if really it's that much more intense, or just they have more sense receptors.
Mhm. Well, also, I would say that there is a threshold of perception that will be definitely differ in dogs. That threshold of perception is much lower. And just like who said it about the dog is that, dogs dogs live by smell. They get a lot of communication, by smell. But I think that as individual as dogs are, I think people are just that individual too. Some people have a really great sense of smell. Others don't really care about it. And but if you want to explore, you know, um some of those things, like I'm sure that on the internet they have some really interesting articles about, how dogs, what their threshold of smell is. Sometimes if it only has, a couple of molecules, they can smell it, whereas humans, it takes more.
Um, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Oh.
please.
Years ago, there was movies, and eventually they were talking about home smell-o-vision. Is the technology around to be able to generate smells that it would be effective in that kind of environment, or would they linger and pollute each other and kind of destroy the experience?
Um, That's very perceptive because when you layer, as you probably know this, you layer one scent on top of another, it becomes something else completely, and it's not good or appropriate for the smell-o-vision experience. They are working on that. Um, they finally got 3D and it only took them 50 years. I mean, 3D is, something else, but they really are working on it. And um there's a lot out there, that aroma 360. There's a lot of people out there who are working on this kind of thing, but I'd say it's at least a decade, if not 20 years off. So, but the smell-o-vision thing, John Waters, of course. John Waters had to have you do a scratch and sniff that smelled like the gas stove or dirty sneakers and stuff. So it wasn't like all pleasantries. It was like, ew. It was funny. Very funny. Anybody else? Thank you, Carrie. Cheech and Chong. Thank you. All right. Oh, petrichor. Thank you. Um, what what Jan, uh, Jan, the lady in Hawaii. Um, this
Janice.
word, this word is called petrichor, and petrichor is like a new definition of a scent that smells like fresh rain. The environment just had a good rain. So Petrichor is like that percolating of all of the smells of the leaves and the dirt and the trees or whatever, and that's petrichor. And that's what you like.
This has been a very interesting presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. That I had such a good time.
I really want to thank you, Amy, for being with us today, and we've enjoyed having you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited.